they can't hear you.
Oh, they can't hear me, okay. You threw me off my balance. So we got another 3 million ounces as well as in the inferred category, which we think we can convert into indicated, and we've got room to grow it from there. I'll show you how the deposit is what's called open in all directions, so we haven't found the ends of it yet. We have done, over the course of our 8 years with the project, a feasibility study that shows that not only is the gold there, but it's economic. As part of the feasibility study, we went underground and we tested every methodology that we wanted to use. We tested our mining methods. We even poured gold. That's a brick of gold that we poured from our bulk sample. Our strategy going forward is to permit the mine. This is the biggest question mark over the project right now. Nobody's permitted a project at this scale in Northern Ireland, but I'll talk through, and Marla will talk through what we've done to give us the confidence that we know that this is going to move forward. In the meantime, on the back of this resource, we'll be able to update our feasibility study. So our base case, that I'll talk about some of the numbers going forward, but in the fall we'll do a new feasibility study based on this much larger resource. And we'll do some exploration drilling and try to find even more ounces over the course of the next couple of years. I talked about jurisdictions a bit earlier, how I've spent most of my career working in more fluid places. In Northern Ireland, there is a rule of law. There is a course you follow to permit something like this. It's a very transparent process. In advance of putting in our planning application last November, we spent over a year sitting down with the government and with each section and chapter of this planning application, the most comprehensive planning application in the history of Northern Ireland. We had over 40 sit-down meetings with government to say, this is what we want to do. Does this follow the code? Does this follow the regulations? And they give us feedback. So in essence, they spent a good year before we put the plan application to build a mine in. They spent with us helping to build it. As well as the 40 sit-down meetings at their offices, they did 70 site visits and to make sure what we were doing was legit. I mean, it's all about your credibility as an operator. So over the 2 years we're underground, we had 0 accidents and 0 environmental incidents. Over the course of the 8 years to get here, there were 6 resource updates. It's over 160,000 meters of drilling, going underground for 2 kilometers of tunneling, the bulk sample. It's an expensive process to get there. And even through some of the worst markets, we were able to raise, to date, over $300 million to spend on this. You can see at the top of the list of the analysts who cover us, Tom. We are his favorite.
He's off the chart.
He's off the chart in his target for us. So from even the lowest target price at $1.70, that's a big jump from where we sit today. And that's, I'll talk through why we think we're there. But as I mentioned, we have a strong cash position still. We have a lot of that $300 million still in the bank to move us forward, so we won't have to go back to the market while we go through this permitting process and indeed keep adding what we think is potential value to the project by improving the feasibility and adding more ounces. This looks a bit like a spaghetti factory, but this is the performance from this time last year of many stocks that we consider to be our peers. It's not been a great year for the industry, and in the last 8 months in particular, everybody's had a hard time recovering. So we fall just about right here in the middle of the pack of performance. Probe's just above us there. Interesting to notice a market reaction. We put out that 6 million ounce resource last week. Our reaction was up a bit on the day, but we pretty much settled back to a flat line, which is the new up. That's a big resource. That's a big high-grade resource anywhere in the world. And to have such a flat reaction just shows you the gold market as it stands right now isn't great, but as far as adding value to the company, we've been hitting all our marks. We're not the only ones. Barkerville put out a great resource last week, and they fell nearly 20% on the day. So it's a reflection of the environment we're in. Just briefly top on, this is the institutional holdings. We have well-known names from around the world who hold the stock. That shows that they recognize the value and that they'll get their payday to come. Curraghnalt, we are in Northern Ireland. That's part of the UK. We're not in the Republic. There isn't a lot of mining in Northern Ireland. There's a salt mine, there's a small gold mine. Around where we are in our area, it's a strong history of quarrying. There's quarries all around the project. But interesting to note, just an hour away, hour and a half away by car, is over the border, Boliden's Terra mine. This is one of Europe's largest underground zinc mines, largest underground metal mines, period. Much larger than we'll ever produce, and that's in the middle of a town. So big mines have been built in the region before. We've been through the permitting process before. We did permit to go underground. We did permit to use explosives every day for 2 years as we did our test mining. We haven't just done the feasibility before that. We did 2 preliminary economic assessments. And every time we did a new resource, we'd do an economic assessment or a feasibility study, and we continue to add value to the project in so doing. The more drilling that we do, the more ounces we've added. Again, this chart demonstrates that. The blue are meters drilled, yellow are, sorry, other way around. The yellow is meters drilled, and every couple of years we've added to that resource profile. As I mentioned, not only is it 6 million ounces of gold, it's high grade, 15 grams, half an ounce. These are rare beasts in the planet right now. There aren't very many of them. I'll touch briefly on the geology. This is a satellite image, so you're looking down on the countryside in West Tyrone. The red lines are the veins that we've drilled into, projected to surface. The blue box is that 6 million ounce resource I spoke about. You can see veins trending outside of the blue box. These are veins that we've drilled into. We know they're there, but we haven't drilled into them enough to say that they're even in an inferred resource. But we're confident that when we do start the rigs up again, we'll be able to add ounces in this direction, where we did do a 2 kilometer step out and hit 5 meters of 15 grams over here, 2 kilometers away. We know there will be more veins in here. We know that 6 million ounces isn't going to be the end of it. Same in the other direction. We've hit veining hundreds of meters away. We know we'll be able to fill in the gap. Same to the north and to the south.
How much land do you have?
We have 120,000 hectares, 1,200 square kilometers. And this only takes up a small percentage of it. So the land, we have mineral rights over 120,000 hectares. That red line right there is this vein system right here.
That's about 10% of Northern Ireland.
That's about 10% of Northern Ireland under mineral license. Just to demonstrate, these are the wireframes, so the geological model, if you like, of the different veins. This was the resource from 2 years ago. This is the one we just put out. You can see how it's grown. We know how to drill to grow it even more. So over the course of the next couple of years, we will be doing drilling to move that 6 million mark even higher. So we're going to step back a bit. There's that blue box. That's the resource. That's the 6 million ounces. As I mentioned, we stepped out 2 kilometers over here. We drilled into 4.7 to 14.8 grams, high grade. We know there's going to be more ounces between those two. Step out the other direction. 2 kilometers away, we're getting 10 grams per ton at surface. 4.5 kilometers away, we're getting 2 ounces nearly, sub a meter, in historical drilling. So we know we're going to find more gold. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we will address that shortly. I'll move quickly to get there. And again, stepping out further, 20 kilometers away, we're getting super high grade, 170 grams over half a meter, an outcrop. So we know there's essentially and I'll get to the question of the permitting. Essentially, we know there's more gold to be found on the concessions. We have defined 6 million ounces. We're wrapping a new feasibility study around those ounces, and we know there's more gold to be found on the concessions. Does it start automatically? So I'll just give you a warning. We're going to do a very short video of what we think the project will look like after we build it from the feasibility.
For the past 6 years, Dalradian has been exploring the Corrinyalt gold deposit in County Tyrone, Northern Ireland, one of the world's top undeveloped gold deposits by grade. Our aim is to build something that Northern Ireland can be proud of, a modern underground mine that uses world-class technologies while respecting the environment. The proposed mine is located 13 miles from the town of Omagh, close to the communities of Greencastle, Ruskey and Gorton. The infrastructure site is in a natural hollow in the hillside, partially screened by trees, which minimises noise and visual impact. All mining takes place underground. Rock is drilled and blasted, and approximately half of the non-economic rock is moved underground into mined-out voids as backfill. The remaining mined rock is brought up from the underground mine and transported by truck along a site road that is screened by a grassy mound to minimise noise, dust and visual effects. Non-economic rock is separated and placed in the mine waste storage facility. The gold-bearing rock, called ore, is then crushed and ground into fine particles before a liquid flotation process separates the gold-containing particles from the non-gold-bearing material. The non-gold-bearing material is managed in two ways. Half is made into dry stack tailings by filtering to remove water for reuse, and is placed as dry stack tailings in the mine waste storage facility. The rest of the non-gold-bearing material is returned underground as part of a cemented paste backfill. Cemented paste backfill solidifies in mined-out areas and provides support within the mine workings. The remaining 10% of material from the flotation process is gold-containing particles, which are treated in a rigorously managed and fully contained cyanide solution process to extract the gold. Gold doré bars, bricks of semi-pure mixed precious metal, will be poured approximately twice a week. The remaining small amounts of solids and liquid that have come in contact with cyanide are treated to reduce cyanide levels below regulatory limits and in keeping with the International Cyanide Management Code. This treated material is added to the non-gold-bearing material from the flotation process and returned underground in cemented paste backfill. The mine waste storage facility stores the non-economical rock from the mine that won't be returned underground and the dry stack tailings. It has been designed to blend in with the surrounding landscape and will be progressively covered in soil and planted during the life of mine. All water used on site or coming in contact with the site will be treated in a purpose-built water treatment facility. Water will be recycled as much as possible, and anything discharged from the site will fully comply with the regulatory limits set by the authorities. Other surface buildings include offices, workshop, a warehouse, laboratory, changing room, and a mine rescue training building. Explosives will be managed safely and will be stored underground for the majority of project life. The proposed mine is expected to provide employment for at least a generation, creating about 300 jobs during the construction phase and approximately 350 jobs during operations. A closure plan will be prepared in consultation with stakeholders so that once the mine's working life is over, the site will be rehabilitated and the land reclaimed in a way that is in keeping with the landscape and the characteristics of the local area. A full planning application, including an environmental impact assessment, is being developed and will be submitted in the coming months.
That application was actually submitted in November of last year, and we'll talk in some detail about the process, it's a set process to permit a project such as this. We are a strategically significant project for Northern Ireland, so we deal with the departments in Belfast. It's not locally dealt with. We have submitted our planning application. It's going through a process of review and stakeholder comment, after which the government will come back to us and have a list of questions which we must answer. So they'll say, you need more detail provided on dust levels or something to that nature. Just like a process in Quebec or Ontario. We expect to be seeing those questions in the fall, and I think we're pretty well prepared to answer them by the end of the year. The next step would be a public inquiry, which is a judicial process where facts are provided from all involved parties, and a judge makes a recommendation to the government. We expect that to happen next year, and the planning process to be completed by the end of next year. Merle will talk about that in some more detail. For me? Oh, really? Do I have to do that again? So what are we doing? We updated the mineral resource for the feasibility. We're looking at neat technologies, new technologies to improve the economics. It'll include ore sorting. We did a really focused geotechnical drilling program in the last year. So this is to improve our knowledge of the rock conditions. So I think we're going to be able to do more automated mining than cut and fills. That improves the economics. We did convert more inferred into M&I and reserves. We hope to do even more in the coming years. And we're going to improve our production rate over the last feasibility study. So Marla Gale, our VP of Communications, who's heavily involved in the permitting process, in community engagement, as well as in investor relations, will talk to you about the permitting process.
As soon as she finishes her ice cream.
I'll be back.
So one of the challenges we have, as Patrick said, is this is somewhat new to Northern Ireland. The salt mine's been going since the 60s, but it's something a lot of people don't know about, and certainly gold mining is new to them. So it's a process of education, whether it's with government folks or the local communities, and just getting them comfortable with some of the processes that are used. They're very comfortable with mining. There's no issue there because they have so many quarries. And Northern Ireland has a very proud industrial past. So that's something we can really tap into and say, this is a great new industry for Northern Ireland. Things like the processing plant and using cyanide, how water is treated, things like that is more what people are concerned about. And you'll find that anywhere in the world. If you're living right next to a proposed mine site, you're going to be concerned about how much noise is there going to be, is there going to be a lot of dust, what about my animals and my kids and health and things like that. So those are the concerns we have to address. In Northern Ireland, there's the government model. There's a coalition government, and there's 5 different political parties. And as you'd expect, there's a fairly broad spectrum of views across those 5 parties in terms of things, a whole range of things, whether it's the Irish language or same-sex marriage, things like that people get hot and bothered about. But the one thing that they do all agree on is that the economy needs to be improved, private sector employment needs to grow, and good jobs are needed. And the area that we're at the west of Northern Ireland is the area that needs improvement the most. So we get a lot of excitement about the opportunities that our mine's gonna bring. As Patrick mentioned, one of the advantages to going underground, as we did for 2 years, and doing test mining, we not only got really good data and proved that we can mine, like we say we're going to, but we also had a lot of interaction with the authorities. So first of all, we've already gone through the permitting process once. So we know how it works, and we're confident in that. We also learned some things, which we're doing better this time around. But the second thing is, we had over 70 visits from the regulators. So the water regulators, for example, they were on site taking samples. We had no accidents, we had no environmental incidents, and they were able to see that we're good operators. In addition to that, I'll talk about this a little bit more later on. We've had over 1,000 people from the local area visit underground. So we actually do tours every month. We call them tunnel tours. And anyone from the public can come in, tour our project, visit our water treatment plant, and see how we're working, see what our health and safety practices are, what our environmental practices are, get to know our people, see for themselves that most of our workforce right now of 50 employees, plus another 40 contractors, most of them are actually drawn from the local area. So when we talk about that we're going to create 100 jobs, and most of them are going to be for 300 jobs in the mine, and most of them are going to be for local people, they can believe it because they can see we're already doing that. And we're providing a lot of training for our existing staff as well. As Patrick said, when we started preparing the planning application, which is just a permitting application, they call it planning in Northern Ireland, we spent about a year and a half putting the application together. It's 10,000 pages long. It's the biggest application that's ever been submitted for a large project in Northern Ireland. We sat down over the course of a year 40 times with the various government departments that are going to judge this application, showing them our plans as they were progressing and saying, this is what we intend to do. Is this according to the regulations? Do you have any problem with this? Do you have any feedback? And then as we got feedback from them, we built it into the application. So that's another thing that gives us confidence that the application we've submitted is very strong and should be approved. So this is a graphic that shows the permitting process that Patrick was talking about. So what we've already done is we submitted the application in November. The video that you watched was actually prepared for the pre-submission consultations that we did with the local community. So we had a whole bunch of experts at our site. We invited people from the community to come on 2 separate occasions, see a physical model of the site, talk to our experts, ask any questions they had about our plans. And based on those consultations, we had over 270 people attend, which is in a rural area is a really good turnout. Based on that feedback, we actually changed some of our plans. So particularly to reduce noise and dust, we moved some of the buildings around on the site, moved some of the equipment in response to people's suggestions. So anyway, we submitted the application in November. We are in the process of consultation and review. So the various government departments are reviewing the application, the water people, the traffic people, the ecology people, all those different groups are reviewing. And then the public can also write in either in support or against the project. What's very typical in a large project like this, whether it's let's say a big mall that's being built or an incinerator or a mine, typically you would get less than 10 letters of support for a project, and you would get thousands of letters of opposition, particularly from the people that live very close to the project. So far, and this is all very transparent, so the full application is available on a government website. And also on the government website, any correspondence, whether it's from the government departments or individuals in the public that write in, all of those letters are online and you can see them. So far we have almost 500 letters of support on that portal. The letters of opposition, I think we're at about 300. We know that there's a lot more letters on both sides that still need to be uploaded. So the government, there's been so much interest in this project, they're having a hard time keeping up with actually uploading all the correspondence.
Like obviously, people that are opposed to anything
Yes.
are the noisiest.
They are the
People that
noisiest.
support are
Yeah.
generally, okay, we like it, whatever, they're more reasonable.
Yeah.
Is it possible that like a person can send in a letter of protest and the same person can send in another one, because they feel like they're 200 letters behind, that they can just add in another 200 under the same name?
No, that would be counted as one letter.
One person.
But they could get their kids to send letters in, or, everyone in their family. Yeah, and the letters are, a custom letter that someone is writing from their own perspective. For example, for support, saying, I'm a grandfather that lives in the area, and I don't want my grandkids to move away like the young people do now because there's no opportunities. I want this mine. Something like that is given much more points than, say, a form letter. Yeah. So we've been...
How organized is the opposition?
Well, it's a very well-educated, first world place, right? So everyone has internet access. People are quite knowledgeable. It's a relatively small group. They're quite knowledgeable in terms of the, I guess, techniques that they use to put information out there or to protest the project. But their knowledge about mining is not very good. So one of the things that we've been doing, there'll be a lot of misinformation that goes out over social media. And this won't surprise you. Things like Facebook and Twitter can be really brutal. So one of the things we've been doing since November is every week in the local newspapers, we're running advertorials. And this has allowed us to explore a whole range of concerns that people have, of questions that come up, and also address some of this misinformation that's been out there. So for instance, something that the opposers to the project will do quite often is they'll post photos of tailings dam disasters. So mines often have tailings dams where they hold the waste from the mine, and it's sort of a slurry, and sometimes those break, and releasing this material into lakes or rivers or things like that. So often when you hear about environmental disasters with mines, it's typically something like that. We don't have a tailings dam. So that's an example of something that's really easy to debunk. We also talk about the types of jobs that are going to be created, the training, the things that we've already done, our environmental measures to protect the environment. So we've done at least 3 advertorials on water treatment and the high quality of the water that we'll be releasing, and all of the different ways that we're regulated, et cetera. So yeah, there's a small group that's against us. They are very vocal, and we're doing a lot to counteract that and make sure that the majority of the people who are either positive or neutral have good information, especially the neutral group that are still trying to decide, maybe they live 10 miles away, so it's not really going to impact them. They're not going to hear it or see it. And maybe they don't have a kid that would like to work there, so it's not really going to affect them. We want to sway those people and want them to see that it's going to be good for everyone in the area, even if they can't see the immediate result. So as Patrick said, all of this review and consultation is going on. We expect by the fall we should have an idea of any additional information we need to provide, probably environmental information to round out the application. And then we expect by the end of this year or early next year that a public inquiry would be called, which can take up to a year, and then a decision would come. This whole process, which is about 2 years, is a very typical time frame and also process that you'd find in any established mining jurisdiction like Quebec or Ontario. That's sort of the 1.5 to 2 years is a really reasonable amount of time to permit a mine.
For 2 minutes, that's okay.
No problem. I'm almost done. So in addition to the advertorials I already talked about, we've done 27 of them so far. The other tools that we use are the tunnel tours that I mentioned. We've had school kids in there. We're expanding and improving them right now, and people just get really excited. If they come in sort of neutral or with concerns, they always leave much more positive. They tell their friends about it, and then their friends come. That's got to be our best tool. We've also had a lot of submissions of interest in jobs. So we have been doing an advertising campaign in Northern Ireland since January that's all about opportunity. So the opportunity that this is going to be for the region, for Northern Ireland, for job creation, et cetera. And we've had a lot of interest in that. And a third of the 1,400 submissions that we've had are actually from the local area, which is not that highly populated. And as I said, the letters of support, we're almost at 500 now. So that's showing very good support for the project. We have expanded our community relations team. We're continuing to do exploration and other technical work, but this is probably the most important work that we're doing this year, is supporting that permit and getting it done as soon as possible.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are you allowed to carry on as per usual while you're waiting for the permit?
Yes. So as Patrick said, this is it's considered a regionally significant application, so that's dealt with in Belfast by the chief planning group. But we also get permits for things like our drill programs, but those come from the local councils. So the work that we're doing with government, we meet with government very regularly at all different levels. So it would be the council level and then Belfast level. Patrick and I are going to London next week also to meet with people there that are very interested in Northern Ireland, and it's a continual process. So we make sure we do it across the parties and all the different levels of government as well. We organize mine visits for them. So not only do they come to our project, but we might send them to that mine that Patrick was talking about that's just 2 hours to the south. They can see a mine that's been operating for more than 30 years, right next to a river in the middle of a town, and most people you wouldn't even know it's there if you drive by it. And it's the biggest employer by far in the area, and there's been no environmental problems. And they use cyanide. Even though it's a base metal mine, as Patrick mentioned, they do use cyanide, and they've been using it for 30 years with no problems. So that is the kind of thing that really helps to address people's fears, right? On their own island, they can see that this is being done, and it hasn't been. So all of the fears that the opposition try to plant, we can just take them down the road and say, well, talk to these local people here and, see for yourself. So just in summary, I would say we have something that's pretty unique. There aren't that many deposits that are, 6 million ounces, really high grade, in a good jurisdiction, and have the support that we have. We're at the permitting stage, so we're quite well advanced. And as Patrick said, that's probably still, in investors' minds, that's probably still the key thing right now that we need to address is how quickly are we going to be able to get our permit? Will we be able to permit this thing? And I think we will be able to show people as the year progresses some milestones on that, some news on the permitting front, and then also drilling. We've got our feasibility study coming out in Q3. We've already shown a really good resource. So there are going to be a number of points along the way this year where there's opportunities for you to see some appreciation in our share price.